about moving to Mexico, or maybe you're just visiting for a short amount of time and you don't know where to begin with housing, stay tuned to this video. I'm gonna give you a comprehensive guide on how to secure an apartment in Mexico. Hey y'all, my name is Shawnie. I have been living in Mexico for 2 years. I am a legal temporary resident, and in my 2-year span of living in Mexico, I've lived in 3 different apartments. So in this video, I'm gonna give you all the details I've learned along the way during my journey here in Mexico with finding housing. Before we get into this video, if you are new here, bienvenido. Do your girl a solid and subscribe to my channel. You're gonna receive a lot of useful info from this video, and the least you can do is pay me back with subscribing to my channel. And if you're already part of the family, what's up, what's up, what's up? So happy to see your face in the place again. I appreciate your continued support. Now that that's out the way, let's begin with the 6 different ways you can find housing in Mexico. Number 1, Facebook Marketplace. Number 2, WhatsApp housing group chats. Number 3, housing websites. Number 4, Airbnb. Number 5, walking around. And number 6, if you don't want to do any of the legwork yourself, using a realtor. Now that we know the 6 different ways that you can find housing in Mexico, let's go into detail on exactly how to do so with each method. For each method, I will let you know if it's good for long-term, short-term, or both. Let's get into it. The first method, Facebook Marketplace. Facebook Marketplace is one of the most reliable sources on finding housing in Mexico. Most of the listings will be posted directly from the landlord. Keep in mind that the price you see will be in pesos, so you need to make sure you can do that conversion rate of how much it will be in US dollars or whatever your currency might be. Go to Facebook, click on Facebook Marketplace, and then click on property rentals. From there, you can put in your location, your budget, the property type, the square meters, how many bedrooms and bathrooms you need, and then a listing of multiple properties will pop up. Scroll through those listings, and the great thing about this is that you can just directly message whoever posted it. One thing I want to mention about looking for housing on Facebook Marketplace is this is not ideal for someone that is not currently present in Mexico. These listings tend to move quick. So if you're someone that's more proactive and you want to find housing a month out, I do not recommend, because on Facebook, you can message them directly, view the apartment tomorrow, and also get the keys. That's how quick it moves. But it is a great option for you if you just want to see what the pricing is like in the area you're trying to move to. From my personal experience, Facebook Marketplace tends to be a better option for long-term rentals. I'm not saying you can't find short-term rentals on Facebook Marketplace. I mean, get on there and give it your best shot. It's mostly landlords who are looking for a tenant that will be there at least 3 to 6 months, if not longer. And since you're already on Facebook, once you're done scrolling housing listings, hit that search bar and type in expats in blank, whatever your desired location to live in Mexico might be. Once you do that, it's going to generate a shit ton of groups you can join. Join them all. They all harvest an abundance of information you're going to need to know about the location you're trying to move to within Mexico. In these groups, introduce yourself. Do not be shy. This is how I found success with finding housing in Mexico. I joined a bunch of groups about expats in Playa del Carmen. I introduced myself. I said, hey, my name is Shawnie. I'm thinking about moving to Playa del Carmen in about 2 months. Can anybody give me any advice? Or can anybody give me any tips on how to find housing? Y'all, I kid you not, people commented on my post, and this one specific lady sent me a direct message and said, hey, if you need help with housing, I have a great realtor. And I'm free, so I don't mind going to view some of these properties and sending you pictures and videos. That would have never happened had I not had the courage enough to introduce myself to a bunch of strangers in a Facebook group. But this is what you have to do if you really want to be successful in your new move. You're already moving somewhere new, so there's gonna be some hiccups you're going to encounter, but you should be proactive in making sure that you can be prepared in the best way you know how with the resources available to you. And these Facebook groups are a literal gold mine of information that you need. But before you go introducing yourself, be proactive, meaning there's a search bar available within the group. Type in whatever subject matter you need an answer to, and it will bring up every post in that group regarding that subject matter. You can toggle on most recent posts so that you can see the most recent information. It is such a powerful and useful tool that you have available to you, so use it. Moving on to the second way you can find housing within Mexico: WhatsApp housing group chats. Before we begin, am I the only one that was literally in awe that the entire world uses WhatsApp on a regular basis, minus the United States? I just found that to be so intriguing. Like, I literally did not use WhatsApp until I moved abroad. But I digress. WhatsApp housing group chats are a perfect way to find long-term and short-term housing within Mexico. Usually you'll get the link to various WhatsApp housing groups through someone you know, or maybe somebody posted the link in an expat Facebook group. But once you're in this group, I promise you, you'll stumble across links to other groups. So it's kind of like a snowball effect. The benefit of these groups is that you have the direct phone number of the person who posted the housing listing, so you can message them. Also, this is perfect for people who are coming to Mexico short term, because a lot of expats who live here will rent out their apartment as they travel. So for example, when I lived in Playa del Carmen, during the summer, June, July, it is excruciatingly hot, and some expats would like to travel throughout Mexico or travel to Europe to get away from the heat. So they would list their apartment available for 4 weeks or 6 weeks. And this is perfect for someone who's only coming to Mexico for a couple of weeks to get away from their everyday life. It is also equally an excellent resource for long-term housing. So if you can stumble across a link to a WhatsApp housing group, you got the golden ticket. The third method on the list is finding housing through various housing websites such as iCasas, Casa Trovit, Lacanda, Homey, Craigslist, and Muebles 24. There are tons of websites out there, including Realtor websites that also have their own list of property rentals. These websites are really good to use for more so long-term, not so much short-term. And the reason why they're so great is because they have a larger inventory of properties. In addition, there are more filters you can use to narrow down your search to find exactly what you desire in an apartment, y'all. Additionally, they typically do list the WhatsApp number to the person who posted the listing. This apartment that I'm filming this video in right now, I found on Muebles 24. And I use this website because I watch a lot of YouTube videos, right? And every time I would watch a YouTube video, no matter what video it was, the commercial that would play would be in Muebles 24, y'all. And it's so catchy and annoying because it would be like, in Muebles 24. And I was like, Lord, if I hear this commercial one more time. But I just took it as a sign to maybe check the website out, and I found success on there because this is where I got my apartment from. So I definitely recommend checking out the various websites that will be linked in my description, just so you can have a wider array of options to choose from. Number 4 on the list to finding housing is Airbnb. Now, I'm sure you're all familiar with Airbnb already, and maybe some of us have our biases and strong opinions about the platform, but it is honestly a good resource for long-term and short-term housing. It's great for short-term stays because it gives you the opportunity to read reviews from others who might have had stays similar to yours, such as a vacation or maybe a work trip, and you can see what their experience was like with that host. And usually Airbnbs are located in really good areas where you're near tourist attractions or restaurants, bars, etc. It's also equally excellent for long-term stays because most people who are not physically present in Mexico will book an Airbnb for a month, and that will give them time to find housing once they arrive at their location. It also gives you an opportunity to walk around, learn neighborhoods, really see where you want to live. Another great asset is if you like the Airbnb you're staying in and the host, you can message them and ask them, are they open to creating a longer contract outside of the app? This is going to work out in both of y'all's favor because the host no longer has to give Airbnb a percentage of their profits, and you don't have to pay them crazy fees, okay? So in the end, you both win. Now, I'm not guaranteeing that this will work out for you, but I personally know plenty of people who've messaged their Airbnb host and asked to create longer contracts off the app, and it worked out in their favor. So you never know until you try. There's literally no harm in asking a question. Number 5 on the list for finding housing in Mexico is walking around, okay? You gotta beat the pavement. Put your shoes on and get to stepping, okay? In my personal opinion, this is the best method in finding housing in Mexico. Perhaps you notice when you're leisurely walking around, you'll see signs that say "Se renta." That means for rent. They're usually posted in windows, on the front of buildings, on doors, on poles. And this is great because it has the WhatsApp number on the poster so you can message the person who put the sign up and inquire about the unit. Walking around and physically being able to get a feel for the neighborhood that the listing is in, see what kind of people live in it. Is it noisy? Do you feel safe? Do you feel unsafe? You really get to experience exactly what you may think it might feel like to live in that unit. And you get to physically see the building with your own 2 eyes. No one can scam you if you see it, okay? Oftentimes, pictures are deceiving, and we all know sometimes things don't look like what's being posted on the internet. But if you're right there in person, messaging the person, and they're saying, hey, you can come by right now, actually I'm free, then the level that you could potentially be scammed decreases. But if you do not speak Spanish, this option may pose a challenge for you because these Se Renta signs are posted by the homeowner and they may not speak English. So if you're not fluent in Spanish, bring a friend that is, or be prepared to be a Google Translate superstar. This option is perfect for people who are staying in Mexico long term, 3 months or more. But I'm not gonna completely cancel it out for people who are staying short term. It just might be a little bit harder to find like a needle in a haystack. But in my opinion, if you're only gonna be somewhere for a few weeks, why waste your time looking for housing? Just get a hotel or an Airbnb. One of the pros of finding an apartment by walking around is that it may not be on Facebook Marketplace or WhatsApp housing chats or on websites. Maybe the owner just threw up a sign and said, somebody will call, and here you are staring at the sign with the number in your face. The competition is low and the opportunity is high, okay? Negotiation is now in your favor, okay? Because you don't have all these other people trying to outbid you. So the probability of getting a really good deal is a lot higher. And let's just hypothetically say that it didn't work out between you and the homeowner. They will more than likely refer you to somebody else they know that's renting a unit because people tend to look out for each other in Mexico. This is something I've noticed and something I admire about Mexican people. The 6th and final way to find housing in Mexico is enlisting the services of a realtor or property management group. Maybe you don't want to sit on the internet all day looking for an apartment, and you don't feel like putting on your shoes and walking around to find one. You like a life of ease, a soft life. And I feel you. So you enlist the services of a realtor. You're gonna give them your budget, and they're gonna send you listings within that budget. Pro tip, never give them your full budget. If your budget is $1,200 US, say it's $900. See what's available in that range before you go maxing out your budget, okay? That's just my pro tip. This is my pro tip. But this option is good for long-term and short-term rentals because typically property management groups will have a lot of vacation rentals for people who are only staying for a month or 6 weeks or 3 weeks or something like that. So it's a really great option. I used a realtor when I initially moved to Mexico. If you remember earlier in this video, the girl that DM'd me and said she would help me actually referred the realtor she used. That realtor then asked me my budget. I told him, he sent me listings within my budget. And then the woman went and viewed them for me, sent me pictures and videos. He also gave her a commission for like a finder's fee for finding me and sending me to him. So I don't really care if she genuinely helped me because she wanted to or because she was gonna get paid. Whatever the case may be, I was just grateful. From my experience, I did not pay the realtor anything to use his services. He got a percentage of the rent that I was going to be paying in the apartment that I chose to live in. So I didn't come out of pocket anything to have a realtor. But I'm also not sure if that is typical for every state in Mexico. So please don't take my experience as the standard because I'm honestly not sure. So that completes our list of the 6 ways you can find housing in Mexico, but we're not just done yet. I have some additional info I really think is necessary to know, especially if you're coming to Mexico long term. So let's just hop back into it. The one thing I want to note about short-term rentals is you need to be conscientious of what time of year you're going to come to Mexico because depending on where you're going, it could be high or low season. I say this because this greatly affects the rate that you're going to pay. If you go somewhere during high season, the rental rates are going to be significantly more expensive. So keep in mind the time of year that it is high and low season because if there's an influx of tourists or events going on, it's not going to be as affordable as you may like. Now let's take a deeper dive into long-term stays. Whether you're coming here for the full 6-month stay on a tourist visa or you're getting your residency and you'll be here for a couple years, these are some key things you need to know if you're renting an apartment 6 months or longer. The rental process here in Mexico is not as tedious as it can be in the United States, thankfully, but let's hypothetically say you found an apartment you like and you want to secure it. Well, one of the first things they're going to ask you for is proof of identification, whether that be a copy of your passport or a copy of your residency card. If you're not a resident, they may require you to pay an additional fee because they run a greater risk renting to you. Now, you're also going to need proof of income. In any of my situations, I provided 6 months of bank statements to show that there is a check being deposited into my account every single month. One of the most important things you need to know is that some landlords, not all, may require you to have an avail, which is also known as a fiador, which is basically a guarantor, aka a co-signer. Now, I'm sure if you've never lived in Mexico or don't have any Mexican friends, you probably don't know anybody that can be your avail, which is why there are companies that you can pay to be your avail. But one way to go around this situation is to offer more months of rent up front. Let's say you found an apartment and you want it, but the landlord requires an avail. You can say, hey, I don't have an avail, but I can give you 6 months of rent right now. Most landlords are going to take that deal because for 6 months, they don't have to worry about you potentially not paying rent. And also on your end, although it is a lot of money up front, at least for 6 months, you do not have to pay rent and you can worry about everything else. So this is one method that a lot of expats use to go around needing an avail. Not all landlords require an avail. It is solely at their discretion. And I am just so grateful that of the 3 landlords I've had, none of them asked me for an avail. Moving on, the next step of the process is the rental contract. You're in Mexico, so that rental contract will be in Spanish. So if you're not fluent, it will behoove you to have someone who is fluent in Spanish look through it so that they can catch any deceptive practices or maybe add something in the contract that you need. But if you don't know anyone who's fluent, Google Translate is your best friend. All 3 of my rental contracts were in Spanish. At the time, I didn't know anyone who was fluent, so I would just scan it, put it in Google Lens, and just read it from there because it will translate it over to English. That is an option. Some of the main things to look out for in your rental contract are if maintenance is included and for how long, because sometimes it's not included for the full duration of the leasing contract. If utilities are included in your rent, or do you have to pay them separately? The notice period that you have to give your landlord to let them know if you're staying or vacating the property at the end of your lease. Also, how long your landlord has to return your deposit at the end of your rental contract. Now, speaking of utilities, if you have to pay your utilities separately, do not fret. You'll usually get a paper copy of the bill and you can literally pay it at any convenience store. OXXO, 7-Eleven, or any of the other ones that are present in Mexico. You just take it to the counter like you're buying a Snicker bar. They scan the barcode and you give them the money. It's that simple. Now, if you're coming to Mexico and you're just staying here for the full term of your tourist visa, which is 6 months, I'm sure you want a furnished apartment. So you need to make sure that when you're looking for apartments, you look for the keyword amueblado. Amueblado. That means furnished in Spanish. And if you're probably someone that's going to be here for a couple years and you want to put your own spin and flair in your apartment, then maybe you want unfurnished. But that is just something to note when you're looking for an apartment. Now, if you get an apartment that's furnished, make sure at the beginning you and your landlord do a thorough walkthrough with an inventory checklist of everything the apartment came with. So at the end of your lease term, you can get your deposit back and they don't say something's missing or something's broken. And speaking of broken, make sure you do an inventory of damages as well. You don't want to be held responsible for anything that you did not do. You don't want to give them any reason not to return your deposit, because most times in Mexico, the deposit is the same amount as rent. So make sure you cross all your T's and dot all your I's so that in the end, you don't run into any issues. Now, when it comes to paying rent in Mexico, you can do it two ways. If your landlord allows, you can pay in cash, or you can transfer the money. Usually you can transfer it using the bank that your landlord uses, or you can use Remitly or TransferWise, which are money transfer services that will convert the currency. So if you're paying in US dollars, it will convert it to pesos to send to that person. But trust me, you are going to pay a fee using those services. One key thing to note is that your rent will fluctuate depending on the exchange rate. Now, the amount that your landlord is charging you for your lease term will not. For example, the first year I got to Mexico, the US dollar was steady at 20 pesos for $1 US. But currently, $1 US is 17 pesos. That makes a big difference on how much you're paying for rent. So let's say your rent is 10,000 pesos. At 20 pesos for $1, that is 500 US dollars. But at 17 pesos for $1, that's gonna run you about $650, maybe $700. The difference is the exchange rate, and it moves up and down throughout the year. So be conscientious when you pick your rent amount, because it could fluctuate $100 to $200 depending on how the US dollar is doing. And the last thing I want to say is trust your gut, take precautions, and listen to your inner voice. If something sounds too good to be true, it probably is. So do everything in your power to take precautions and be proactive to know how rentals work here in Mexico. Being that you're a foreigner and if you don't speak fluent Spanish, you're an easy target. So don't be a victim, be a victor, and really educate yourself. Watch YouTube videos, search Google, ask people in expat chat, and do your due diligence when it comes to finding an apartment. All right, y'all. That's everything I have for you. In my 2 years of living in Mexico, that's everything I have learned. And I know this video might be a little lengthy, but I feel that it was needed so that you have all the tools necessary to go find an apartment in Mexico. If you took value from this video, give it a thumbs up. If you have more questions or concerns, drop a comment. And thank you for making it to the end of this video. I really appreciate it. I'll see y'all on the next one. Peace.